Hello. Welcome back, everyone. I am here with the three-time NCAA champ, five-time All-American, and six if you count relays. I'm here with Wes Ferguson from Nebraska-Kearney. Wes, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Let's dive into your awesome career. I mean, first of all, I just got to say, you're a 152 high school guy, a 49 second 400 high school guy. You were a pretty elite recruit, and you up with Nebraska-Kearney. And so my first question that I kind of like to ask everybody was, what was your welcome to the NCAA moment?
Definitely my sophomore year of college. I qualified for the indoor meet, not really honestly having any expectations that year. It was my first year actually competing because freshman year was COVID and I was kind of hurt the whole time. So I ended up making that indoor meet. And my goal going into it was to just make finals. And then I ended up getting seventh in the finals. I feel like at the time I didn't mentally prepare well enough to put myself in a position to win it there. So I guess I was just a little scared. And then, yeah, I would say that was definitely my welcome moment.
Yeah, it's got to just be really tough to as your first year competing. You said you were a sophomore, but it was kind of the first year where you were actually like producing results. And so just like being leashed onto that scene and then like going into NCAA championships against these fourth year seniors and fifth year seniors and stuff, it's got to be tough. But assuming we're going to skip over your cross country career, because I mean, you're an 800 guy. We'll kind of get into that first NCAA championship more into depth. I mean, you came in as a star, obviously, as you were a 152 guy, but you ran 150 in your second career NCAA 800, which is a pretty big breakout. That 2-second PB may seem minuscule in other events, but in the 800, a 2-second PB is pretty massive. And so like, take me through more in depth of like your mindset going into that first championship. Like, what were the goals?
Yeah, so when I ran 150, I was actually in January at our first meet back from winter break. So I knew that I was a lot more fit than I have been ever before. And I never ended up getting to run faster that year or that indoor season. So going into that indoor championship, I knew that I could definitely be like a top 3 finisher. And then, I don't know, mentally something just clicked that day where I really wanted to win. Like I don't know, I was just in the zone and it worked out well. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
Well, in 2021 outdoor, there weren't really any results in your TFERs. So, we talked about this beforehand. You had a bit of a quad issue and banged up. What does that training look like? And what does it mentally look like to be an athlete dealing with an injury like that? And how did you, not only come back, but come back stronger from that?
Yeah. So like almost all runners know, if you're lucky enough to not be injured, you might not, but the hardest part is it's not the training, it's the mental part. So the one thing I really couldn't do without straining that quad was speed work. And as an 800 guy, you kind of have to do speed work. So it was just a lot of trying to get faster runs in, but I couldn't really rip like 200s and 400s because I popped it like 2 or 3 times training that outdoor season, just trying to push it after 2 weeks of being cautious. And then we'd go for a race or workout and then I would tweak it again. So
that must have been just extremely frustrating. What is it like trying to come back from an injury and then you have that setback again and you're probably just thinking, oh, you just want to like punch something, right?
Yeah. You spend like 2 or 3 weeks being safe and smart. And then you think, all right, I can finally go after it today. Then you hurt it again. And then there's another few weeks. And after a few times of doing that, your season's over. So that's just how the game goes, I guess.
Yeah. It really just shows that there is a luck aspect to running. Like you can have all the talent in the world and you can be training as hard as you possibly can, but there are other factors at play and some of them really are out of your control. But in 2022, after you fought off that injury, things obviously really changed. You improved your PB by 3 seconds in the 800, which is massive. You went from a 150 guy to a 147 guy. And you broke through and won your first 2 NCAA championships, one in the indoor season, and then in the outdoor season, you followed up with another win.
Yeah.
So kind of just like talk about that off season going in from 2021 to 2022, is there anything you changed or did differently to make that huge jump? Or do you think it was just like a strength thing that you developed throughout time?
I think most of it was just maturing and consistent training over that summer because we always take a good few weeks off after the end of each outdoor season, depending on what races I have in the future. But yeah, I guess just staying motivated in the summer, which as an 800 guy who doesn't really excel at cross, you could say, is just getting a good few months of 30 to 40-mile weeks in and just being smart and not doing anything stupid and just staying patient.
That's a good answer. Not doing anything stupid. going into going into that NCAA championship, that first indoor victory that you had, was the goal to win it? Like, did you see that happening beforehand? Like, did you know you were good enough to take that win?
I definitely knew I could because everybody looks at Tiefers, so I was just looking at all the guys. And there were a few guys with faster times, but in a championship race, you just have to trust your speed because I'd say most of the time, nobody's going to run what their max capability is that day. They're just trying to win. So I knew if I put myself in a good position, I could trust my speed and just hold them off.
In a championship level 800, because I think that's interesting what you said about just kind of like the tactics of going into a final versus going into like a time trial sort of race.
Mm-hmm.
And often in NCAA 800 finals, the times are almost as fast or just as fast as you would see in a time trial setting.
Yeah.
But they really are run so differently. So like, what are you thinking mentally going into like an 800 final, and like how do you plan for all those different scenarios that could take place?
Really, the main thing I look at right before the race is starting is just to get out. You don't know how fast it's going to go, but just get out hard and then don't get locked in. Honestly, you're running more, but lane 2 or 3 on the outside is honestly kind of my comfort zone. Because I can trust myself to make a move whenever I need. So just being in a spot where you can move no matter what's happening is definitely the good plan to go with.
Hmm. Yeah, that's super interesting. It's interesting as a miler hearing what you're saying about like
Yeah,
800 stuff, just because it is, even though it's only a small difference of distance, it really is quite different when you're thinking about like the tactics of it.
yeah,
Um, one thing, just kind of going off of that. So you obviously won that indoor, and then you won the outdoor meet after that.
hmm
Um, so you did this successfully, but how did you manage the expectations going into that outdoor season after you had just won? Because now you're not the guy that has a chance to win anymore. You're the guy going in as everyone wants to beat you. Like, this is the guy that everyone's planning on beating, and they're watching your races and they're planning on racing and beating you. So how did you deal with the expectations of that and then walk away with another victory?
I feel like you could either let it get to your head and kind of it can mess with you and you start doing things differently mentally, or you can just ignore it and just keep doing what you're doing because at the end of the day, nothing changes. Just keep training how you're going, and I don't know. I try to just block that stuff out.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting like talking to a lot of the people that I talk to about this stuff, and it seems like everyone has a quite similar mindset of just like, I don't want to think about that stuff. Like, there's no point of thinking about that stuff, especially when you're so close to it. And everyone at this level, your mind is racing anyway, and like you're going to
Yeah,
be able to hype yourself up, and you don't need to think about those extra little factors, especially
mhm,
right beforehand.
definitely.
Um, but then moving on from 2022 into 2023, which was by far your best year ever, time wise at least, you did though indoor season. You had this new rival that entered the NCAA, the Angelo State freshman, and I'm definitely going to pronounce his name wrong. I apologize in advance, but Osana El Bouchayby, Yibai,
Maybe Yei Bai, maybe. I think
y-
that might be the one.
yeah, something like that. I'll just call him the Angelo State freshman from now on. But he ran 147.11 indoor, and then later ran 145.3 outdoor. Um, and so then racing him at your first indoor championship, did this kind of help you deal with managing those expectations because you kind of got to go back in as the underdog again because he had run the quickest time in the NCAA and had been this guy. But then you're the underdog that can take him off his pedestal again, and you're the experienced veteran all of a sudden.
Yeah, that I'd say it helped a little bit, but for some reason that indoor meet was one of my toughest mental challenges. I kind of felt a lot of pressure that day for some reason. And that whole weekend, you could say is excuse, but every now and then runners go into meets and they just don't feel the pop that they sometimes have, the zap, I don't know. You just don't feel bouncy. So the whole weekend was a struggle, but I still ran really well. I had an indoor PR, and I did everything that I could to try and beat him, and he was just better that day.
Yeah, that's it's hard to word it any better myself. You gave him an unreal shot, PRing by almost a full second. But you came up short by 0.38 seconds. How did that motivate you training and getting ready for the outdoor season? Because I'm sure you wanted your revenge.
Yeah, you know, it can make you think that along the way you did something wrong or different, but that's just kind of how the sport goes. At any point, someone can come along and knock you off of your not pedestal, but they can take your spot, and that's just how easy it is. So I guess I just got back to work and really wanted to have a second chance at racing him at California or the outdoor meet, but I ended up getting put in that second fastest heat. And then he ended up not running in the outdoor championship. So we just haven't met since.
Yeah, let's talk about that 2023 Brian Clay meet because there were so many great athletes there. Like him again, he was there. And then D1 stars like Abdullahi Hassan, Jason Gomez, Aiden McCartney, Sam Ellis. And not only did you show up and compete with those guys, but you beat pretty much all of them. So what was it like at Brian Clay being in that second heat? Was there a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, like I'm better than all these D1 guys? And what was your thoughts going into that?
Yeah, it was one of those meets where you can't wait for those heat sheets to come out and you're anxious up until that point. And I had a feeling I wouldn't make that fast heat just based off the amount of people entered in their lifetime PBs, whether they ran it 2 years ago or last year. But some guys get enough times that they hadn't ran that year, which makes it harder to make the fast heat. So I kind of expected to be in that second heat, but it was still kind of a bummer because that would have been a really good opportunity to break out a little quicker than I did.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the guys ran one as quick as 145 that day, which is just absolutely incredible. But then, so obviously you still ran very quick at Brian Clay. Quite easily got a qualifier into the NCAA championships outdoor. Um, and then just kind of take us through the mindset of going into the outdoor championships where you're trying to prove you're the guy again. Like you had just gotten beat, knocked off your pedestal during indoor, and you've put a string together of great races, and you're coming back to get the title that you feel like you deserved. And honestly, I've watched quite a bit of your races before, and I think this was the most impressive race you ever have run because not only did you win it, but you won it by almost 2 entire seconds, and you were less than 2/10 of a second off the national record in a race where you were never even really pushed. So, like, was this the plan going into this race? Like, were you just going to take it from the gun and absolutely hammer this, or like, what were you thinking?
You know, I had some not inside knowledge, but I had a pretty good feeling that Reese Sharmanula was going to go out pretty hard, considering they're at his home track, slight elevation, and honestly, that's just the way to go. So I knew getting out fast was the only way to put myself in a good position for that race. And I had to fight that first 200. I had to weave between two guys to get onto his shoulder. But from that point on, it was just a chase game, and that's really where I think I excel the best.
Yeah, well, you definitely chased successfully as everyone else. The field seemed to all fade with 200 meters left, and you seemed to just be getting going. It was unbelievable watching that. And then this had to have been a great momentum builder into a USA championship. What was What was your mindset and goals going into USA's last year?
You know, that outdoor meet was one of those days where I talked about indoor, you just didn't feel the pop in your step. That day I felt amazing. So you just know you're ready for it. And then going into USA's, I didn't race anywhere. We just did some time trials, and I ended up running. I had some pacing done by a teammate, but I ran a 218.91K at our home track outdoor. So that was what I felt one of my greatest performances ever, and that was a huge, huge confidence booster.
Yeah, well, it seemed to work out for you. You cruised into the second round, and you beat some great D1 and professional athletes like Sean Dolan, Devin Dixon, and advancing over Creighton Carrozza. So mindset wise, you finished the first round. You ran, I think it was 146 something,
Right?
correct?
146.9. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So you had to run pretty fast. And you get a couple day break and you have to come back again. Are your legs starting to feel tired yet from all these races kind of back to back? Or do you genuinely feel like you're just kind of getting going?
So that first prelim race, our traveling got all messed up that week, and we didn't actually get into Eugene until like 10 or 11 the night before. And the race was that next day at 1 or 2. So I felt terrible that day, and I had to fight for that third spot finish. And then we got the 2 day break. I was getting settled into everything, and I felt amazing in that semifinal heat. So
Yeah. Well, take us through that semifinal because you're racing against some unbelievable athletes like Will Summer, who is uh, the D1 NCAA champ that year, Isaiah Jewett, who everybody knows who he is, NCAA champion slash Olympian. You're rematching against Devin Dixon and then plenty of other stars. Um, so you finished in the top three, well into the top three in that race, correct?
in that semifinal heat,
Yeah.
yeah, I ended up winning it actually. So,
Yeah, so you won that semifinal heat, and then how long after was it where you found out about the disqualification?
oh god, it was too long. We they put DQ up initially, and then you have to go back and look at the film and everything, and they make a final decision. So I did my cool down before I even knew what the result was, and it was probably
That's
30 to 40 minutes, and I didn't find out until going through the tunnels, exiting the track, and I went up to talk to my parents, and my dad's giving me this heartbroken look, and that considering I won the heat and I didn't know anything, that can only mean one thing. I was like, oh crap, something happened.
um just so I was there running the 1500 that day, and obviously I had heard about the disqualification, but none of us knew why. Why were you disqualified that day?
I hit the line, not over the line. I just barely hit the inside of the white line twice, 2 steps in a row, and it was
Wow.
not even more than a centimeter. I think they showed me the videos, and it was very tiny. They just have cameras looking everywhere, so that's at that level of meets. It's like the only time that that's going to happen. I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. That's crazy. Just unbelievable. Well, either way, even after that disqualification, obviously, I'm sure you're mad that because you seem to be in good enough shape to make that um, US team
Hmm.
travel to the World Championships, especially a year before an Olympic year like this year, and a year where a lot of people are signing professional contracts and stuff. I'm sure that was pretty disappointing. But even looking at the best case scenario of that, you were still the second highest placing NCAA 800 runner, no matter the division at USA's, and that's still got to be something that you're pretty prideful of, correct?
Yeah, I obviously there's some disappointment for a little bit after, but I looked at everything, tried to from a positive manner, and there's really nothing bad to take away from that year. So just motivation, I guess.
Yeah, like kicking off of that year and kind of jump starting into this year. Um, I'm sure the goals change. Obviously, again, like I'm sure you want to obviously defend all your titles, but being an Olympic year like this year, how does the training change Are you peaking a little bit later than usual? Are you not quite focusing as much on the NCAA as you used to, and kind of just like training for that USA meet, or like what is the? Are there any changes that are taking place?
Uh, I might be just a few weeks behind on speed work, you could say, but I still think I'm in the best shape of my life. Just looking at previous years, I'm running a lot more miles this year. I had a little more mileage this fall, just a little more base work. So I guess nothing really dramatic is changing. We're just trying to keep the same mindset, not really obviously peak for an indoor meet, but still be able to perform very well and just stay healthy. That's the main thing.
So is the US indoor championships something that's on your mind, or the world indoor championships? Is that going to be something you think about, or is your main focus outdoor in this Olympic team?
Yeah, we won't end up making that trip. It'd be
Okay.
fun, but it's just a lot of traveling. And when you have
Yeah.
it's weird being it's fun being on my college team right now because we have a DMR we're trying to qualify, we have a 4x4 we're trying to qualify. So it's funny to think about an indoor USA meet and then you got other stuff you're trying to do, which I think is honestly more fun and more important at the time.
Yeah,
Be able to
completely.
be a college
That's
athlete
awesome.
and have fun, yeah.
So what kind of just to add on to that college athlete stuff, what are your goals for this year?
Uh, I want to win the titles, but I think I can go after the records like that. I think I can run 145 indoor. That would easily get the record, and then outdoor go after the record again, I guess. But I'm not a huge goal person. I think when you're focusing on the right things, those kind of take care of themselves instead of putting the pressure of that having to happen at a certain race. Then it's harder to.
So So talk about that a little bit, because I know a lot of people agree with you and think differently when they think about goals. So do you set like time goals for yourself, or are you more just like, hey, I'm going to commit this first 200 meters, and then I'm just going to fight today, or like what do you think about going into a race if you're not necessarily goal oriented?
Uh, all of my PRs that I've ran have been races where I've just been going into it with the process of winning or the thought process of trying to win. And then when you can distract yourself from that, as long as the pace gets out, it almost just happens sometimes. But
Yeah,
this year it might be a little different. I might have to take a little more charge and go after just get out hard and see what I can do.
cool. Well, last question for you, and this doesn't really have anything to do with racing or goals or that kind of thing, but what is your secret? And kind of sounds cheesy when I ask that, but is there anything that you do that nobody else does? I'll give you an example. I jump rope quite a bit. It's really weird. People make fun of me for it, but I really think it develops speed. It develops my kick. And so like, if there's anything that you do that's interesting, now's the time to tell it.
Oh gosh. Well, I'll give a training answer and then just kind of like a random answer. I'm sure a lot of
Cool.
people do this, but ellipticaling has been a big part of my like cross training and extra work. And I haven't done a ton of it lately because I've been healthy and I've actually been able to do like morning run doubles, which is something I'm not totally used to. So I guess just the extra cross training has helped over the few years. And then I don't know, I love golf and disc golf, so a lot of me and the buddies on the team we do stuff like that. It's good to stay active and not feel like you need to restrict yourself from physical stuff outside the world of running.
Cool. I'm kind of interested on this elliptical thing because I talked to Maddie Elmore like a week back, and she does quite a bit of biking as her cross training. And so,
Hmm.
like, when would you implement like an elliptical? Would it be like a workout in the morning and then like an elliptical instead of like a double in the evening?
They would usually be in place of like a morning run, or if there's ever
Okay.
a day where I don't something's like kind of bothering me, but we're not really super concerned about it. We just want to be smart. Like yesterday, for example, my Achilles was just a little sore, nothing like alarming, just at this point in the year, there's no reason to push it. So I went old
Yeah.
school for 30 minutes pretty hard. And honestly, if you ramp up the settings high enough and you get after it, it's hard work.
Cool. One more question. I lied to you. Just out of curiosity. You were teammates with Seth Simonson, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What was it like being his teammates? Because we can relate. I was Seth Simonson's teammate too.
Oh
So
yeah. I love Seth. He was a workout warrior. That guy always pushed me. He's just a hardworking guy. He never shied away from it, even in races
yeah,
too. He would always take
being
to like it.
sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, being like miler, and he would be a great guy that I would like do like hard 200s with, and he would
Yeah.
actually be able to like stay with me, and I'd be like, holy crap, this guy can sprint.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he was pushing you too in practice.
Oh yeah. Him and I would get after it some days.
Nice. Well, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for coming on, Wes. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was fun.